Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jamanatira Vanachadi. Jamanatira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Gopijana Balabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jasodanandana Brajajanarandana. Jamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jamuna Tira Vanachadi. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajagacharya Astatarasata Sri Mad His Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gora Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're taking, through sound, we're taking the association of the Gopis. Isn't that nice? and their meditation upon Kṛṣṇa while he's in the forest taking the cows. Just the last paragraph that we read. We're going to be reading, if you like to look it up, 10:35, 8 through 11. 10:35, 8 through 11. So the last paragraph is a quote from chapter 20, Canto 10. When the Vrindavan forest had thus become resplendent, filled with ripe dates and jambu fruits, Lord Kṛṣṇa, surrounded by his cows and cowherd boyfriends and accompanied by Sri Balaram, entered that forest to enjoy. They weren't really herding the cows, they were playing. And the cows followed along. Ooh, let's go. So, as a reminder, these, our acharyas say these verses are in pairs. The first verse of the chapter is an introductory verse, and then there's 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. So this is now 8 and 9 and 10 and 11. And so that's how it's been translated here, BBT. The first verse is, in general, it's the sound of Krishna's flute that is intended to call the cows and so forth, and then how other entities, other forms of beings, devotees of Krishna in the Vrindavan forest, how they respond, different responses. So, text 8 through 11, translation. Kṛṣṇa moves about the forest in the company of his friends and vividly chants the glories of vividly chant the glories of his magnificent deeds. He thus appears just like, this is the Gopīs saying he's not, but he's like, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is exhibiting his inexhaustible opulences. When the cows wander onto the mountain sides and Kṛṣṇa calls out to them with the sound of his flute, the trees and creepers in the forest respond by becoming so luxuriant with fruits and flowers that they seem to be manifesting Lord Vishnu within their hearts. As their branches bend low with the weight, the fruits and flowers cause their branches to bend low with the weight, the filaments on their trunks and vines stand erect out of ecstasy of love of God. This is the Gopīs speaking. And both the trees and the creepers pour down a rain of sweet sap that they didn't go catch in buckets and offer to Kṛṣṇa because it says not to do that, right? Maddened by the divine honey-like aroma of the tulsi flowers on the garland Kṛṣṇa wears, swarms of bees sing loudly for him, and that most beautiful of all persons, guess who that is, thankfully acknowledges and acclaims their song by taking his flute to his lips and playing it. Listen to this. The charming flute song then steals away the minds of the cranes, swans, and other lake-dwelling birds. Indeed, they approach Kṛṣṇa close their eyes and, maintaining strict silence, worship him by fixing their consciousness upon him in deep meditation. Elsewhere it says, I thought this was going to say this, he hears the sound of the bees and he catches the note that their bee buzz or sound is, and he plays his flute according to that sound. And then they adjust the sound and he adjusts his flute playing, and it's a concert. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has made several illuminating comments on these verses. He gives the analogy that just as when householder Vaishnavas hear a Sankirtan party approaching, they become ecstatic and offer obeisances, so the trees and creepers in Vrindavan become ecstatic when they hear Krishna's flute and bowed low with their branches and vines. The word darshaniya tilak in text 10 indicates not only that the Lord is, quote, the most excellent to see, but also that he decorated himself with attractive reddish tilak taken from the mineral-rich earth of Vrindavan forest. You had that question, right? Minerals decorating? Oh, it was you. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also points out that tulsi, although exalted in many ways, is not normally considered an especially fragrant plant. However, early in the morning, tulsi emits a transcendental fragrance that ordinary people cannot perceive, but that transcendental personalities fully appreciate. The bees, who are privileged to swarm about the flower garlands worn by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, certainly appreciate this fragrance. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes from the Bhagavatam 3:15-19 that the effect that the most fragrant plants in Vaikuntha also appreciate the special qualifications of Tulsi Devi. Paragraph. The word Sandita Venuhu in text 10 indicates that Lord Kṛṣṇa placed his flute firmly upon his lips, and the melody emanating from that flute is certainly the most enchanting of sounds, as the Gopīs describe in this chapter. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary covers the verses in pairs. So he starts with 8 and 9. As these rivers, that's referring to the previous verse, 6 and 7, as these rivers, though unconscious entities, are eternally perfect, being the forms of devatas, it is natural that they should react in this way, but see how the immobile trees of low birth, born due to previous karma, relish the sound of the flute in this way. Another group of gopis spoke. When Kṛṣṇa, endowed with unchanging opulence, Achala Vibhuti, similar to Narayana, Adipurusha Iva, whose strength is described by the cowherd boys, wanders in the forest, being attracted by the souls there. All the creepers, along with their husbands, the trees, having directly seen Vishnu, who usually appears in the mind, weep tears in the form of streams of honey, not sap. They are just like Grihastha Vaishnavas who, on hearing Sankirtan, offer their obeisances along with their wives. Being endowed with flowers and fruit, the creepers have sthāyī bhava, that's their fruit, along with sanchari bhava of joy, that's their flowers. Their completely bent branches indicate the anubhava of paying obeisances. As their hairs were standing on end in joy, they displayed the sattvika bhava of romancha. Romanchas, hair standing on end. Romancha kampas rutarangavajo. Text 10 and 11. After describing the creepers and trees as householder devotees in the previous verse, the swans and cranes are described as detached Atmaramas, worshipping Vishnu and hearing the flute. Paragraph. Kṛṣṇa wore attractive markings made from mineral clays. Attractive markings made from mineral clays. Darshaniya tilak. The phrase can also mean that Kṛṣṇa was like tilak, the most excellent among all beautiful things. Kṛṣṇa wore a garland of 5 colors with fragrant tulsi, whose honey was sought by greedy bees who hummed loudly because of their unrestricted madness. Paragraph. There may be an objection. Usually the lotus, jasmine, and nagakeshara are described as fragrant by ordinary people. Though the glories of Tulsi are much greater, her fragrance is not highly praised. The objection is answered as follows. Ordinary people can sense a little of Tulsi's fragrance, but spiritually advanced persons can experience her fragrance as greater than that of the lotus. Since the bees had qualification for the flower garland on Krishna's neck, they also could sense more fragrance in Tulsi than even the spiritually advanced persons. However, only Krishna's nostrils can smell the most sublime fragrances. By the covering of Yogamaya, these fragrances cannot be perceived elsewhere. The special nature of Tulsi is stated in the description of Vaikuntha. Quote, this is Canto 3, Chapter 15, Text 19. Although flowering plants like the Mandrakunda, Kurubaka, Utpala, Champaka, Arna, Punaga, Nagakeshara, Bakula, Lily, and Parijata are full of transcendental fragrance, they are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi, for Tulsi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi leaves. Paragraph. When Kṛṣṇa thought about what pitch he should play on his flute, the bees would buzz, and Kṛṣṇa would play his flute according to that pitch. Respecting the song, when he placed his flute on his lower lip, the water birds left the lakes and, approaching Kṛṣṇa, began to worship him. By seeing, hearing, and thinking of him, they closed their eyes, indicating that they were tasting the rasa. Vishwanath is a Rasika Bhakta. It always explains things that way. Here's Jiva Goswami. Again, broken into 2 verses, text 8 and 9. After having the cows drink the water and drinking the water himself, Along with the cows, he enters a mountainous area in the shade of beautiful trees. Letting the cows graze freely, he listens to his friends' songs glorifying him, and then he calls the cows with his flute, since they have wandered far off because of his inattention. When he plays the flute, then what to speak of the supreme worshipable rivers in the form of their presiding personalities? Even the immobile trees in this place react in a similar fashion. That is explained in these two verses. Paragraph. His prowess is described in order. Anu Varnita. From birth pastimes, filled with the affection of his mother and father in the most excellent way, filled with prema, with all details of the pastimes by friends who always accompany him. Anu Charai, because of great friendship. Or Anu Charai can indicate that the friends gather together with the same mood. Or the word Anucharai can indicate that the friends are next, Anu, to him, each Anu displaying his skill in describing Kṛṣṇa. Paragraph. His acts, filled with power, virya, are praised completely with rasa, bhava, ornaments, singing, rhythm, and gestures. He is an exceptional personality, Adipurusha. Or, though he has fixed beauty and qualities like Narayana, Adipurusha, he wanders in the forest. This shows his extremely playful nature. The example of Narayana is given to confirm his similar nature, not that he is the Lord. Though Kṛṣṇa is actually the Supreme, situated above Narayan, the Gopis use the word Iva to indicate he is similar to Narayan. Iva means like. It means, well, here it can mean other things too. Since the Gopis' natures are completely filled with sweetness like Kṛṣṇa's and do not consider Kṛṣṇa's powers, they use the word immovable wealth to indicate his natural wealth of sweetness, which is unequaled and ever increasing without decrease. Achala bhutihi. Achala bhutihi. So we know bhutihi, vibhutis. Achala bhutihi. This increasing sweetness is then shown in the consequent words. He wanders in the forest because the cows have disappeared, but actually he eternally wanders in Vrindavan. Achala bhutihi. He wanders in uneven areas, giri tateshu. Thus the cows become tired. Thus he calls them with his flute. As the crest jewel of cowherds, he is skillful at calling them. Paragraph. He wanders in the forest, then in the forest all the trees and creepers make known that Kṛṣṇa, who spreads everywhere Vishnum, or enters every one, has appeared within themselves. The verb is in the feminine because the creepers, being women, represent the Gopis' mood. The word Iva in this case means exactly, rather than like. He appears within them because his actions are under the control of their love. Another meaning is that he is similar, or Iva, to Narayan. By this they make clear the previous example, Adipurusha Iva. The creepers, feminine, and the trees, masculine, are filled with fruits and flowers. They are endowed with all sadhanas, and their results are indicated in the following. Now here comes a very famous verse from the Bhagavatam. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat yakinchana sarvair gainais tatra samasate sara haraba bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manoratena sati davato bahi. The Devatas, just a second here, problem. Okay. The Devatas, this is a translation. The Devatas constantly dwell with all good qualities in that person who has pure bhakti for the Lord. There are no good qualities in the non-devotee who chases after temporary material objects with desire for material pleasure. Then another verse from 11th canto, Uddhava Gita. All auspicious means of perfecting life are easily achieved by my devotee through bhakti. If somehow or other my devotee desires swarga, liberation, or residence in my abode, he easily achieves such benedictions. Paragraph. The bushes are bowing down heavy with fruit. Having seen Kṛṣṇa with satisfied eyes, they become full of bliss, bowing like the 4 Kumaras. Honey flows as tears for the creepers and trees. Their sprouting buds are their hair standing on end. This is famous in Gokula. Here's a Canto 10, Chapter 21 verse. Quote, my dear friends, when Kṛṣṇa and Balaram passed from forest to forest with their cowherd friends, with their cows, carrying ropes to bind the cow's rear legs at the time of milking, by the generous sound of his flute, among all living beings, moving things become inert, and trees sprout shoots in ecstasy. This is most amazing. And the final paragraph for that section, that's verses 8 and 9. The description also applies to the Gopīs. In both cases, they are spread with prema, though the word prema is in a particular compound. It applies to the other words in the verse by the power of its meaning. The trees shower honey or tears constantly and abundantly. Another version has shashruja. The trees produce tears in a remarkable way. Or the trees full of honey produce prema. The trees spread prema to all onlookers by their actions. In the case of the trees and Gopīs, Kṛṣṇa has spread everywhere, and this is revealed in certain signs in the trees and in the Gopīs. And now his commentary on text 10 and 11. Previously wearing forest decorations, Kṛṣṇa performed suitable pastimes. Hearing songs, he wandered in the forest. Now he is described with a change of dress. Tired at noon, he takes a bath in a large lake and then quickly puts on tilak and garland with little decoration. Eating a picnic lunch with his friends in a wide elevated area, sitting on a stone slab under a huge tree, after sending the boys for gathering the cows, paying attention to the bees which have been attracted to his new garland and are his only association, he enjoys playing his flute. The Gopis describe this. What to speak of the trusting trees? Hear what happened to the living birds. Paragraph. He wears tilak made of gorika. I guess that's this red oxide mineral or something. Gorika. He wears tilak made of gorika, which is always attractive. He wears a garland made of most attractive flowers and most fragrant tulsi, which attracts bees because of its honey. Since all the bees would completely cover him, they instead circle around as if intoxicated, with the strong ones pushing away the weaker ones so they can come close to Kṛṣṇa. Really detailed, huh? Because they are intoxicated, they sing loudly. That is the special nature of their song. The song which they sing by their nature as bees is most attractive, abhishtam, to Kṛṣṇa, because it expresses extreme eagerness. Or, whatever song he desires from them, they sing with colorful ragas. They have this astonishing nature in Vrindavan. In uttering the word desired, the Gopis experience some hatred mixed with affection. Many things are dear and desirable to Kṛṣṇa except us. Because the song is dear to him, he respects it. Just on starting to play a pleasurable song on his flute, all the birds, cranes, swans, and chakravakas dwelling in the lake, come to that song and approach upasata, approach Kṛṣṇa, famous for his attractive nature, harim. Though they are most numerous and inclined to play and joy, they are most fortunate. They then faint in bliss. With controlled minds, they become silent with closed eyes. Oh, Hanta. The Gopis cry out in distress on not attaining their desires. As with other words indicating the Lord, there is another meaning. This is the last sentence. The birds seem to be worshipping Vishnu with controlled minds. That's Vrindavan. You know, that's a travel advertisement. What's it like there? What do they do? I didn't go to this place, but during one visit to Boston, some devotees went to, I don't know which group it was, some Christian group that had this IMAX theater to promote their theology. And it was just, so it's like this experience. It's not just like something visual, it's IMAX. And there's plans to do things like that in the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. There's a sannyasi in the Gaudiya line, one of Prabhupada's godbrother's disciples, who is into it. He has this portable unit, a tent kind of thing, and people sit down and they have an IMAX experience about, with different teachings. So they're taking that technology, they plan to use it in the exhibits for the temple, because besides the planetarium, the chandelier thing, there's things all around that are to explain Vedic cosmology and the teachings connected with it. So, yeah, in Boston, this is many years ago, IMAX was just coming out, so it was like a big deal. But they got into it. I'm sure they spent a lot of money because the technology was new. And it's expensive when it's new. So the devotees went to see how they're promoting their theology. And you sit down in the theater, and there's some, it's really simple, from what I was told. It's, a religious family that's part of that tradition, and they're having a nice time together, enjoying the companionship of family members, and they're eating, on the table, and down below is Fido the dog, and they feed scraps to Fido the dog, and they have a nice time, and then they go into their car to go somewhere, and it's nighttime, and something like they see some oncoming headlights. There's some screeching sound. There's a sound of a big collision, and the lights go out. They die. And then you hear this nice, classical music, dreamy music. And then the scene opens, and there they are in heaven, having dinner together at the table with Fido under the table. And, if you're part of this religion, that's what happens. When you die, you just stay with your family and have a nice time. It's a little bit like that, what we heard from this Adam and his wife, asking about soulmates. It's a modern phrase that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But according to them, the Mormon faith says if you get married in the Mormon church, and to get married in the Mormon church, there's some requirements. One of the requirements is you have to tithe. And tithe means 50% of your income goes to the Mormon church. Or you can't be married in a Mormon church. But if you do that, you get married in a Mormon church, that's your soulmate. And after this life, you go to the good place because you're a Mormon, and you're with your soulmate. I mean, there's reincarnation in their theology. That's nice. Anyway, lots of different ideas out there of what the kingdom of God is like. That was very. If there's any definition to it, it's interesting, and mostly there's no definition to it. It's how do you depict God if you don't know Vedic teachings? It's not so common these days, but it used to be common that Christian preachers would go on the street corner and thump the Bible and tell people they're going to hell if you don't become Christian. That's not too palatable anymore, I guess. But they had tracts, and the tracts show God sometimes. And there's two varieties. One looks like Abraham Lincoln in the Lincoln Memorial sitting there in a big stern, and you come before God for the judgment day, and have you been a Christian or not? Like, that was one picture. Then another picture of God is a cloud in the sky, and this old man with a beard that kind of you can't see very well because he's just a cloud, and it's just this faint image. And that's God, because he's the oldest, right? He's got a long beard and looks really old. It's a very different picture. What's it like there? Why should we want to go there? What's the marketing tool to get people to go there? It's not like shame on them or something like that. It's just knowledge is distinct from ignorance, or as light is distinct from darkness. And it's good that people have some idea of God, and God loves you, Jesus loves you, and so forth. Then behave accordingly, please. So we're very fortunate that we have access to Srimad Bhagavatam. I find it very interesting. I often speak about this, but in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's time, the printing press, offset printing, was just becoming known. And they manually put letters onto a board and to make whatever the printing was going to be, and that was what offset printing was. So this big plate comes down, it gets inked and stamps the paper, and just like the original Bhagavatam, the letters are kind of not even, because it wasn't digital, it was just manual offset printing. So he didn't have access to Bhagavatam. He was a very learned person and moved in learned circles. And it wasn't until he had to get a handwritten copy when he was in his mid-30s. Now it's abundantly available. So easily available, people may not take it so seriously or something. But in any case, those who receive it, it's transcendental mercy. In any case, what to speak if they read it, and a lot of that is going on during this pandemic time. More people are reading Prabhupada's books than prior. So yay, more pandemic. For sure it's coming. For sure it's coming. Not for that reason, but by contact with Bhagavatam, there's light. Bhagavat Arka, the light of the Bhagavat. To give light in this dark age of Kali, when people are engaged in so many awful things, without listing the awful things. It's the age of Kali, and it gets wilder and noisier and violent, and even when it's the goal is something that's mode of goodness, it's violent. Kali's doing a good job. And what to do about it in this age of Kali? And that's the light of the Bhagavad. That's Vyasadev's conclusion. And it's our Acharya's conclusion. So our Acharyas are giving us this very amazing, detailed close-up. I mean, any one of these, supposing somebody's an artist. So just hearing any of these descriptions, paintings, or supposing someone is a filmmaker, make films, or supposing someone is a meditator, meditate. Supposing someone likes to chant shlokas, chant the shlokas. When there's a spiritual inclination, there's so many outlets that may come from expressions of devotion. Somebody likes to teach these things. Now, many people don't have the interest or the patience, or it's Kali Yuga, so manda samanda matayo manda bhagya. They don't have spiritual inclination. But somehow or other, if by hearing this, it's greatly beneficial. So even if someone is just introduced to some part, that's their eternal credit. And those that are instruments for introducing, that's they get some Kṛṣṇa points. They get some assist points. That the assist Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Sankirtan mission, some mercy from Lord Chaitanya, just by assisting. And when you give that to people, they can trash it. That's a risk. Just a little sharing, and I'm going to end and see if there's some discussion. 1970 summer. I joined the Boston Temple, and one of the very first day I was in the temple, I was invited. I didn't have a choice to go with the Sankirtan party, and it was nice. I liked. So there I was in my rustic, non-devotional clothing, and college kid mop of hair and stuff. So there was a person. We went to the Boston Common, and the Boston Common is like a park. There's 2 parts to it, etc. But that when we went to do our chanting, especially at midday, there's the red line and the green line. That's how they call their train system in Boston. And so it was really busy. And down over that way, just a few blocks away, was Washington Street, which was a big commercial street, shopping street. So people would, at lunchtime, people come out. So there we were chanting. And there was one man that either lived or worked in that area, and he came out every day, and he was a madman. He was a madman. And, he would rock back and forth, glaring at the devotees as they were chanting. And when it was, so the system was half an hour chanting, then whoever's chanting distributes back to Godhead magazines, and then the persons distributing back to the Godhead magazines come and chant. Half an hour, 2 hour during the lunch break. And then back to the temple for lunch. That was our program. And then it changed. Eventually we just stayed out and had lunch out there. So, first day, and the madman saw me. Like, he picked me out of the crowd. It wasn't difficult to figure out he's a new guy. So when it was my turn to distribute back to Godhead magazines, he had this behavior that he would come up, and as we were giving the magazine to people, he'd start screaming like a madman. Don't take that magazine, don't take that. And then he'd snatch it from the person's hand and rip it in pieces and jump up and down on it. And different things like that. He was like, so I took shelter of Jayadvaita Maharaj. What should I do? Because he was a brahmachari at the time. He said, don't worry, just keep going. So I did. And Jayadvaita Maharaj waited until he started doing his thing, coming to me and telling people, don't take it. And Jayadvaita Maharaj put his hands like this, and at the top of his voice screamed the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra. And the man heard, put his hands on his ears, and ran the other direction. And then he quoted the verse from Bhagavad Gita, the demons run here and there, flee here and there. So I was there only for the summer, and at the end of the summer I was a trade to go to New York. But by the end of the summer, the man was still a madman. He would still come out every lunch hour. But then, just from hearing the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra and the association of devotees, he did a U-turn, 180. He would scream at people, take the magazine, it's the best thing. And jump up and down. And, he was still a madman. He didn't regain his normal faculties. But, his heart changed just from hearing the Hare Kṛṣṇa mantra and associating with the devotees. And, it was what he was ripping the magazines and jumping on it. It was offensive. But somehow Krishna excused him. And he There's some other stories like that, but bhakti has its power. That was an eye opener, as you know, it's a common expression for Indian people. It's an eye opener. It was an eye opener. So what do we know? We're little people, and we're hearing these very elevated topics of Krishna and Vrindavan, and certainly they're attractive. But you know, as soon as class is over, it's back to everyday life and so forth. So how do we, just like it's a common, how does someone go from being involved in the world, just like that teenage girl the other evening asked, how do we carry out our life and stay fixed in Krishna? And what to speak of, little girl or young teenager, right? Etc., etc. It's resting upon the hearing process, and the hearing is going to strike our hearts differently. And like the discussion yesterday evening, the more one has in this life and or previous lives, and in this life in the degree of receptivity heard, then that remembrance stays with you. And what we're doing morning and evening, at least, and whatever else you do during the day, chanting and hearing, it awakens that forgetfulness. Now, what about those who are students, and what about those who are householders? Are they like, what's their situation? And their situation is, they have some duties. According to psychophysical nature, there's duties. In stages of life, there's different duties. And you do your duties. And you engage in hearing and chanting. Sthanes tatak, that important verse from the Bhagavatam. 10:14:3. Stay in your position, perform your duties, don't speculate, engage in hearing. And so there's purification on the psychophysical nature side, and the primary is its purification on the heart side, or the seat of consciousness side. And that's what we do. That's for our own edification, clarification, purification, attraction to Kṛṣṇa program, and extend that same opportunity to others according to your nature and capacity. And the more we can do the second one, it helps the first one. The more that we can do the first one, it helps the second one. It's our lifestyle, even in the midst of Kali Yuga, where things are, nutty. Just like when it seems like it can't get worse, it gets worse. And then who knows, doesn't take too much, some war. And then, during war, it's horrible. And then after war, people get more peaceful. I mean, it's just cycles of time, without going into cycles of time. So whatever the cycle of time is, our program doesn't change. At one time, it was in Mayapur, 1975 or 76. Prabhupada, there was tension between India and Pakistan. No surprise. And Prabhupada was speaking about there may be a war. And then he was describing what the war would be like, and Russia would take the side of this one, and America would take the side of that one, and become a world war. And the devotees were going, whoa, what do we do, Prabhupada? Should we stock up on, supplies and put it in our farms and, hunker down? And Prabhupada was like really unhappy. He said, this will be a great opportunity for preaching. That's how he saw. I mean, it doesn't mean we're safe, just like now. But we have to be in the mood of receiving and giving. And you figure out a way to receive and a way to give, and you do that. That's what we do. It's a great opportunity. People are all, heebie-jeebies about what's going to happen. It's not safe. Anyway, without going into details, the principle doesn't change. The form that it takes, we have to use intelligence to understand the form that it takes in different audiences. And when that enthusiasm is there, guess what? Kṛṣṇa gives intelligence, and there's a method. And then time moves and circumstances change, and principles don't change. Details change. Okay, so I'll stop there. Let's see if there's some discussion. Gosh, it's 8:26 already. Anyone in the room would like to say? Yes. Pass the microphone, please.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You were mentioning that if the bhav is there, then Kṛṣṇa gives the intelligence, and then there is the method.
I use the word enthusiasm. Please use my words.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So enthusiasm, and then knowledge, and then there is a method. So I want to know more about what you mean by there is a method.
Krishna is the supreme controller, correct? And Krishna desires living entities come back to him, correct? So Krishna will supply the intelligence, whatever it will be effective, he'll supply. We're dull instrument, we're dull receivers. But you whatever your receiving capacity is, you do that. And then you refine it is because there's enthusiasm to assist Krishna. Okay?
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So I have a very basic question. This came to me. What should be our prayers? At my level, I'm asking before starting to chant.
Prayer is personal. The should be is the trick word. It should be something that's meaningful to you. That's what it should be. There's standard prayers, and there's a host of them, and it depends on what moves your heart. That's what it should be. Rupa Goswami has some prayers. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has some prayers. Shikshastaka has some prayers. Huh? Yeah, your personal prayer, standard prayers, something that's meaningful to you. That's what it should be.
Thank you.
Okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was discussing with this with someone. So this pandemic right now, and we, like you said, we should be. People are seeking, and they should be looking, and it's a great opportunity for us. But my experience, looking online and social media, where I usually look out, I'm not seeing much. Is like, do we have to wait for the pandemic to be over, or
No. I don't have an answer to what social media is doing or not doing because I don't go there. But I'm sure there are, and because there are devotees that are very creative, and circumstances are normal circumstances are restricted, and so there must be some methodology. Here's just one example. One example is Shivaram Maharaj has developed and is continuing to develop a system of reaching people through social media. And his system is being followed or not copied, but styled like what he's doing by others. Gauranga and others are doing through social media. He's just taking simple messages and with some visuals that go along with that simple message in a real bite-sized, short, impactful messages for broad audiences. And in New Zealand, Deva Amartya Maharaj in Wellington, you can go check that one out. They have a system of reaching young people. And, it's very young people-ish. There's a magazine, and there's this and that, and statements and interviews, and it's different. It's for a certain audience, and so it's out there. And when there's a will, there's a way. Or I'm using the word enthusiasm, and Kṛṣṇa gives intelligence. So there are possibilities. Then one has to have some time and, I guess, some kind of technology skills so you can use that medium. I don't know anything about it, but I know some people that do know something about it, and they're doing something. Okay. Do you have something? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Maharaj, for that nice description of the advertisement of the spiritual world. I was just thinking of the maddened bees.
Which?
The mad bees. The bees that were mad and like intoxicated. Looks like there is like scope for madness and intoxication.
Oh yeah.
In the spiritual world.
Oh yeah.
Of course, it's
transcendental.
Madness, and transcendental love, prema. I guess my question is like, when somebody becomes that mad bee in the spiritual world, is there any relation to like how they live their life in the material world? Like for someone to become that mad bee in the spiritual world, or is it just completely different when it comes to like how they've lived? Is there any correlation to how they've lived their life in the material world that they become a mad bee in the spiritual world? Or is it just, when you go to the spiritual world, it's just a different like mood you get into?
I'm unaware of any connection. However, just in hearing your question, the intensity of absorption leads to degrees of intensity of emotion, up to madness. Like, we've been hearing, this is for example, we've been hearing about the love of Nanda and Jasoda. Now the others who are cowherd men, cowherd women, they have love for Kṛṣṇa also. But the degree of absorption is there's no real comparison. They're in the superlative position. And then they're compared to Vasudeva and Devaki, who had what great honor of having Kṛṣṇa as their son, but they didn't have the same intensity of absorption. So, comparative and superlative. But that's not hitting your question. Your question is previous lifetime. But I'm just saying, even in the spiritual realm, it's intensity of absorption. So that's where we have to look to in our practice of sadhana, intensity of absorption. Like how attentive are we when we're chanting japa? The intensity, the degree of absorption. And, that's in part what the theme is of this coming festival of the Holy Name. Yearning, enthusiasm, spontaneous. Degree of absorption. And depending upon the degree of absorption, that's where we go.
Online questions from Raksha. Is it mentioned in the Bhagavatam that women are considered less intelligent? Why is it so? Please enlighten me.
There's multiple answers. The first part, I don't know of any statement in the Bhagavatam specifically. There's the reference in the Bhagavad Gita, Striyo Vaishistata Shudras, Tepiyanti Param Gatim. But when it comes to how to understand that statement that's in the Bhagavad Gita and how Prabhupada expressed it, or, I guess here's one statement that comes to mind. Queen Kunti comparing herself to the transcendentalist who can't fully understand Krishna, so what to speak of us women? Painting herself or portraying herself as less intelligent. But yet, on the other hand, she actually understands Krishna in ways that other transcendentalists or aspiring transcendentalists cannot understand Krishna because of her prema. So the point is, when it comes to prema, or when it comes to the stage of maturing bhakti, there's no material distinction. This nomenclature has to do with minus bhakti, there's the material distinction. So I'll send you remind me, and I'll send you some answers that devotees have given over a period of time to that question. And this devotee can then read what they say and then write to the people that said it and say, I don't like what you said, or something like that.
Sunil Prabhu, can you post my phone number in the group so that they can reach me? Yes. This question is from Sanchari. Does a version of Narada Muni appear for every Brahma, or was it just for our Brahma that he had appeared?
This question seems to be a popular question. And the answer, an honest answer is, I don't know. And I've never received, I've never read anything anywhere that says yes or no. So at the same time, there's indication in Brihat Bhagavatamrita by Narada Muni to Gopakumar that he and other associates of the Lord, like Uddhava, because also the three of them are there together, they have multiple expansions for the Lord's purposes. So it seems, logically, if not Narada, somebody that's in that same role or bhava for the purposes of Krishna's pastimes and edifying people and so forth. That's the logical one, but I don't know anything definitive from scripture that says yes or no.
Yes, sir. Continuation question is, also we see that Narada Muni has a lot of responsibility in helping to move the Lord's pastimes by playing tricks or enlightening Krishna's devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, etc. Who took up this responsibility before Narada Muni became Narada Muni? Are there multiple pure devotees who take up this service, but Narada Muni is the most well known?
Same answer.
Question from Sri Radhika Mataji.
It makes sense that there is somebody doing that service, but I don't know anything definitive that says yes or no.
Sri Radhika Mataji's question. How does a devotee stay non-judgmental and empathic while at the same time having faith in the statement you read, there are no good qualities in non-devotees?
Well, non-judgment, there's knowledge and there's judgment. The advocacy of Bhagavad Gita is to be situated in knowledge. And to be situated in knowledge in the true sense is to see as Kṛṣṇa sees. And Kṛṣṇa is not judgmental. So when you have knowledge like Kṛṣṇa has, then you're not judgmental. You can see, here's the mode of ignorance, here's the mode of passion, here's the mode of goodness, here's transcendence, here's its features, its symptoms, here's what it looks like, here's what it feels like. And so you can be situated in knowledge without being judgmental. So to say that there's for a non-transcendentalist to say that unless you're a devotee, you don't have good qualities, that's like, that's very irritating. It sounds judgmental. But what's the meaning? And the meaning is that which is eternally existing, or there's no feature of time involved, or it doesn't come into being and then go out of being or manifest like the modes of goodness. There's qualities of the modes of goodness, and they show goodness. But then there's competition with the modes of nature, and the goodness disappears and something else. So time moves, and the good quality disappears. So that's not a transcendental sense of a good quality. There is a transcendental sense of good quality, and that's beyond the modes of nature. So unless one is beyond the modes of nature, good qualities are going to be intermittent at best, insubstantial, the reflection of the real thing kind of qualities. It's a reflection. It's not the real thing. So that's not judgmental. Well, it can be judgmental. Na 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 na. I'm a devotee, so I've got good qualities, and you don't. Na 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 na. That's not a devotee that has that mentality. It's not real knowledge.
Question from Uttama Bhakta Prabhu. Preaching not only means giving the message of Kṛṣṇa directly, but also helping someone to grow from mode of ignorance to passion to goodness in an easy and understandable way?
Yes, that's right.
Question from Prakash.
And how somebody does that, it's completely different for each person. I mean, how Prabhupada did what he did, and how Bhaktisiddhanta did what he did, and how Bhaktivinoda Thakur did what he did, and how Gaura Das Babaji Maharaj did what he did, and how Jagannath, everyone's different. How it's going to manifest in the world is going to be different according to Krishna's indication and one's nature. So it's not, don't expect something that doesn't match reality. It's going to be different how it manifests. But the principle doesn't change.
Question from Prakash Prabhu. Some persons in the same apartment building as my parents in India have COVID-19 and they are hospitalized. One of them died yesterday.
Oh.
This dead person was the same age as my father. Both my parents seem to be disturbed by this.
Good.
I am not sure how to help them other than saying, don't be afraid. Could you please advise?
Well, do lots of self-quarantine. Follow what the people that know about this thing say to do. That there's the emotional and then there's the practical. So both.
Question from Rupa Vilas Prabhu. Are the Gopīs realizing Kṛṣṇa as the Supreme Lord in this chapter because they are addressing Kṛṣṇa as Adi Purusha?
It's answered in the purport or the commentary. They say Iva, Adi Purusha Iva. Their sweetness mood as such, it eclipses his seeing him with majesty.
Another question. Here the rivers are being considered as wives of ocean and the creepers as wives of trees. Are these entities really connected as couples, or the gopis are simply imagining?
I don't think there was a religious ceremony for them to be married. It's a relationship. And it's not a formalized relationship, but it's, it's a vines cling to trees. So there's a relationship. And they're thinking in that way. And I don't know if the vines consider this is my husband or something like that. Or the rivers are considering that's my husband, the ocean. It's a relationship. Leave it at that.
Question from Hari Prabhu. Are there any references which talk about writing a mantra as opposed to chanting it?
I don't know. Gujaratis, I know, do this all the time. But, is there scriptural authority for that? I don't know. Yeah, I imagine that there's some basis for it. And, writing means it goes to the mind. When you're writing, it goes to your mind. So it's the mind and engaging the hand instead of the ear and tongue. So it's another set of senses engaging the mind and the name. So there must be, spiritually there's benefit. It's not the primary recommendation for the sage, it's through sound. But is there a scriptural basis for that? I don't know. You can ask some of your Gujarati scholar friends, maybe they know.
Question from Paramatma Prabhu. Sometimes we see non-devotees show some really good qualities. But Srimad Bhagavatam says, without being a devotee of the Lord, one has no good qualities. Is it that as time passes, the good qualities fly away? How to understand it?
I answered that question already. Good is good, and then transcendental good is permanent. That's the distinction.
That's all.
That's it.
Guru Maharaj, one thing. For the online audiences, is there Bhagavatam class tomorrow, Saturday? And
I don't know. What's your...
There is a 11:30 class and a evening 6:30 class.
Okay, so the answer is no. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.